challenge course industry, there are several ways that are acceptable for attaching your climber, your participant on the challenge course, to the rope and to the safety system. So one that you are already familiar with, or should be, is the figure 8 follow through, which is also known as a direct tie-in. Here I'm wearing a rock climbing style harness, which is not the norm in the challenge course industry, but on some courses you may find this. And tied in with what you've already probably been familiar with, which is a figure 8 follow through. And again, in the ropes course industry, challenge course field, most everybody will require what's called a backup knot or a barrel knot on top of that. For you rock climbers who don't typically do that, I believe that the rationale in the challenge course field is that we want to minimize any potential for error, and not everybody is a rock climber and ties their knots as perfectly as possible. So when you have a backup, what that ensures is that you've got a substantial amount of extra rope, so that if this were not tied tightly enough and cinched appropriately by somebody who's not as detail oriented, at least you have less of a chance of things coming undone. So anyway, we've got the figure 8 follow through with a backup, and that's known as a direct tie-in, and that is something that pretty much should be used on any challenge course element where there's a chance that you could be rubbing up against cables and pieces of hardware or equipment that could possibly dislodge or undo a carabiner. So that's what we prefer to use on our course, and that would be our local operating procedures. So a lot of this is going to depend on what the local operating procedures are, but there are some general accepted practices that I'm about to show you. So the other would be, some courses will allow a figure 8 on a bite that is nicely dressed. Talked about that in a different video. Also with a backup or barrel knot to ensure you've got enough tail so that the figure 8 follow through could not come undone. So again, I've got a figure 8 on a bite that is properly dressed with a barrel knot cinched up nice and tight to it, with enough tail there, and simply taking a locking carabiner, attaching it to the rope, and then on a climbing style harness you would be attaching to a belay loop. Okay. Locking it and giving a squeeze check. Okay, so that's another form of attachment in the challenge course realm. Again, this would be used on a high ropes course where there is little chance of having things hit and rub against your attachment point. Okay. Third option, and I've already tied this. Again, you should be learning these on your own. What we've got here is a double figure 8, also known as a super 8. So it has 2 ears that you can clip into, and again, you clip into the knot, clip into the harness, lock it. This also has a barrel knot backing it up. Okay, you can hold it up like this. You can do a squeeze check. And the bowline on the bite, again, you will find ways to tie this yourself. Learn that on your own. So this is a bowline on a bite, And the bowline on a bite also has 2 ears that you will clip into, so a little bit of redundancy there. You also want to leave enough tail when you tie this, always with the bowline, to have a backup. I believe I have another video that shows how to tie this one. Great. So I've got my bowline on a bite with an appropriate backup knot. And again, I can clip this into my harness, do a squeeze check, and we are good to go. So those are 3 different attachment methods for the challenge course high ropes clip-in or tie-in, direct tie-in. All right, make sure you know the local operating procedures on your course before you start attaching people for climbing.